Yeah.
Have you been tested, Pauline? Have you gone?
Yeah, because there was a contact with somebody one of my coworkers.
You're okay?
Oh
It
yeah,
did-
yeah, it came
it
back.
didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's over about a month and a half ago. So
Yeah. But the darndest thing is you don't want to be, if you're asymptomatic, give it to somebody else.
mhm.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
There's Karen down in Arizona. Hello.
We're probably almost as warm as Arizona right now.
Well, it's a few minutes after 12, and I'd like to welcome everybody. There may be more coming in yet, but let's get started. And to get started, I'd like to cue Don Main. He's got a few words to say. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for showing up.
So I've been asked to introduce Susan Morrisey, who's been the executive director of the Edmonton Social Planning Council for the last 16 years. And so I've got to know her quite well through that organization. I was interested to discover that Susan is an Edmontonian originally and attended Bonnie Doon High School. And two of our family attended the same school, and she lived not far from where we lived in the Bonnie Doon area. She studied recreational therapy at the University of Alberta and worked in the Good Samaritan Center for a number of years, and then worked with seniors in the community. And then 16 years ago came to the Social Planning Council. And I've been very, very much impressed with the Social Planning Council over the years because they are really into the issues that concern me as a member of the community. And so they prepare articles for printing and have many connections with the city as well. So it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce Susan Morrisey as the speaker for our program today.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Dawn, for that lovely introduction. Thank you very much. You kind of gave me a second there to be able to go down my own little memory lane there about, yes, born and raised in Edmonton. And have lived here probably almost all my life. I was away in Victoria going to university there for a few years, but then came back to Edmonton, and where all my family and my friends are and that. And so Bonnie Doon High School no longer is a high school. It's now an academy of some sort. And so, yeah, so just thank you very much for that lovely introduction. So I do have a few slides that I'm going to use today. I'm going to try and share my screen. I don't do this very often, so bear with me. You guys have asked me to come and tell you a little bit about the Social Planning Council, although I suspect a few of you probably already know a little bit about us. I would suspect we've been around for 80 years, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I get a sense from the people that are on this video chat today that maybe all of you or many of you have been quite actively engaged in your community, our community. And so I'd be surprised if some, if not all of you know a little bit about this organization. So I've been asked to talk just a little bit about the work that we do, and then provide some statistics around some of the social issues that are happening in our community, and then participate with you in a bit of a discussion and a conversation. So that's what I've been asked to come and talk about today. I want to just give a little bit of a caveat before I get into the presentation itself. So the data that I'm going to give you, and I have to say I haven't put together an awful lot of data because I find that for me, that's better discussion and substance when we're dealing with a few items as opposed to trying to rattle off, 20, 30 stats to anyone. Believe me, this is the work I do, and I tend to check out shortly after when I'm bombarded by that. The other thing I wanted to just say is that some of the data that I'm going to present to you, some of it's local, so it's in Edmonton based, but some of it is actually provincial, and there's an odd smattering of some national data, which again just speaks to the fact that the Social Planning Council, though we're local in nature, we do engage in work at a provincial level and as well with our partners at a national level. And the last sort of caveat I want to mention is that I have tried to bring a little bit of the COVID impact into this, although not so much in the statistics that I'm going to share with you, but in some of my additional comments afterwards. And I've kind of done that deliberately because the Social Planning Council, we are now working with our partners at the Edmonton Community Foundation in putting together one of our next vital topic, vital signs reports, which will come out in March, which dives much more into the impact of COVID on our community. But I have gone ahead and I will share a little bit of what COVID has done in this community in this last year. So I'm going to, okay, so now so if I click on this, tell me whether or not you can full screen see. Are you able to see my presentation, the first page?
Nothing yet, Susan.
Nothing yet. Okay, so let me see. Let's go back here. I think there's a button that says share screen, and there it is. And okay. Let me just get out of here.
Got it.
Let me just go to here. Let me go to, my apologies, folks. Sometimes I hit the wrong button and away we go. Okay.
You've got so many choices on your computer.
Okay. New share. There we go. Okay. Now can you see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to minimize that. There we go. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to start by telling you a little bit about the Social Planning Council. So we are an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan social research organization here in Edmonton. We have registered charitable status, and our focus is on social research, particularly in the area of low income and poverty. So our work includes undertaking research into the nature and magnitude of social issues in our community. And again, I'll share some of the research we've done in there, but our website as well. And it's all freely available on our website. Any of the multitude of reports that we put out in the course of a year, they're all available there for people to be able to access. We also do public awareness and for an understanding of current social issues. And we're an independent voice in the community, encouraging public participation in the development of social policy and the implementation of programs. Lots and lots of words there. Really, in a nutshell, we're concerned and are wanting to investigate and analyze data pertaining to social issues in our community. We do write a lot of reports. One of the most recent ones that would have come out in December was the annual Alberta Child Poverty Report that we put out. As well, we have a Tracking the Trends report that we put out every couple of years. And just a multitude of whether it's reports or it's blog postings, various other things throughout the course of the year. We're also very much engaged in public awareness and understanding of the issues through the lunch and learns that we do in the community. And I really can't stress enough the fact that we are an independent voice for the community. So we do receive funding from the United Way. We do receive funding from the Community Foundation, again, through donations and through contributions in that. So sometimes people get sort of mistaken and think that we're an arm of the city of Edmonton or we're funded through the province, but we're not. We certainly get some funding from those orders of government from time to time, but being independent allows us to be able to identify the issues that are there and be able to, call into question or keep orders of government accountable. So from a historical point of view, we were incorporated in 1940. And it came from delegates from member social agencies involved in social betterment and individual interests in community welfare problems. Since 1940, the Social Planning Council has incubated many, many organizations that continue to exist today. And some of these you're probably familiar with. This is just a few of those, including the John Howard Society, ABC Head Start, what is called SAGE now, but what used to be called the Society for Retired and Semi-Retired. We were responsible for incubating the Canadian Mental Health Association, the Edmonton chapter. We were also very much involved in establishing what's now called DATS, Disabled Adult Transportation. And the Edmonton Rape Crisis Center, now the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton. But the real crux of from a historical point of view was that initially Edmontonians identified that there were needs that were not being addressed, and that they came together and they decided that they needed some sort of organization that could provide both a collaborative but also a coordinating function. We have are just in the process of releasing our 80th anniversary booklet and timeline, and it will be on our website. And if you're interested in finding out more from a historical perspective, I would draw your attention to that. It certainly was very interesting for myself to read through the booklet and find out the many, many ways that the Social Planning Council has been engaged in our community. So what we do, so this is part of our statement and mission statement, and it's through rigorous research, detailed analysis, and community engagement. We deepen community understanding of the social planning issues. We influence policy and we spark collaborative action that leads to positive social change. I've already touched upon the research and the analysis and the engagement. We have had opportunities. Many of you will know that it's when you're looking at policy change, it doesn't happen overnight. But I do actually say that the Social Planning Council has had a couple of wins in this area over the 16 years that I've been with the organization. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. We have, for forever and ever, I'll say, we advocated for a Alberta Child Benefit. Every publication that had to do with income gap, that had to do with poverty, we would always make that recommendation in that report based on evidence that we were able to find. And I was so pleased when, in fact, in 2017, we actually, the government of the day actually established an Alberta Child Benefit program. And I can honestly say that that program in itself has done an incredible job of being able to address poverty for children and for families in this community. And though you can't necessarily say it was directly because of our work, because many other players around the table were also advocating, but I think that we can claim a little bit of a win there. The other one that stands out in my head, just as an example, is for a number of years, we advocated, we made presentations to City Council, we researched, we looked at what other municipalities were doing around a low-income transit pass. And again, I was really pleased to see that the City of Edmonton actually established a low-income transit pass a number of years ago. And again, the impact of that low-income transit pass has been huge. Being able for people who are living in low income to be able to access public transportation, to get to jobs, to take their children to daycare, to go on to education, to a number of areas, has really been quite incredible and had a huge impact. And again, the Social Planning Council was very actively involved in advocating for that. Another part of what our job, what our organization does is we work very closely with other organizations, and I call these the grassroots organizations that actually provide direct service to vulnerable people in our communities. So for instance, sometimes it's the food bank, the Edmonton Food Bank. It could also be the Islamic Family Social Services Organization, a number of organizations, ABC Head Start. And the role that we play working with those organizations is we want to try and help them build their capacity to do their jobs. And so the kinds of things we'll do is we provide some research support to those organizations in the form of, and I've listed here a couple of examples, best practice. We did some work around investigating and establishing a list of some best practices around heritage language learning for young children, which we shared with ABC Head Start, and they've actually incorporated it into their curriculum. And we've also done some work around gathering and analyzing statistics on seniors who are immigrants in Edmonton in Canada. And the agency that we did that work for then took that information and wrote it into one of their grant applications for a new program. So our focus in this capacity building area is to help those organizations that do provide the direct service to individuals with the research support that oftentimes they just do not have the time or the resources to be able to do. So here we go. Here are some statistics. So let's start by talking about homelessness in Edmonton. Now, the numbers that I have here come directly from the Homeward Trust by names list. And the by names list is a real-time list that's on the Homeward Trust website, which actually tracks people on a day-to-day basis. And you'll see that this, the data that I'm sharing with you came from January 4th, which would have been the last time that they would have updated that, that dashboard. So as of January 4th, approximately just under 2,000 Edmontonians were experiencing homelessness. And it was 804 females and 1,067 males, 11 transgender and 15 unknown. 1,016 are provisionally accommodated. 308 of those people are in emergency shelters, but 561 were unsheltered and 12 were unknown. With the fairly significant percentage of Indigenous people living in Edmonton, of that just under 2,000 homeless people, 1,189 of them were self-identified as Indigenous, 615 non-Indigenous, and again, 93 unknown, so they would not have necessarily wanted to self-identify, being either Indigenous or non-Indigenous. But of that number, again, 243 of them were dependent youth or children, and 184 were independent youth. So these are youth who are somehow either living on their own, are somehow in the system, maybe receiving some support, but nevertheless homeless. This is where I'll pepper in a little bit about COVID. So the COVID effect over the course of the last year, and I know all of you probably, definitely read newspapers, listen to the news, so you're well aware of the impact of COVID. So in February of 2020, there were 1,835 Edmontonians experiencing homeless. And by August, there were slightly more, so 1,874. But the peak was in May of 2000, where there were close to 2,000 people who were homeless, 1,941. I think, in terms of the way we look at this, anybody who's homeless is an issue, and anybody who's homeless is a concern. But we can honestly say that the pandemic itself has not really significantly impacted the homeless count per se. And I guess we can also be very thankful with the opening of Northlands and then the convention center, that those were two ways of being able to try and help homeless people out, especially during the pandemic. I'm going to go on to the next one, and I think at the end maybe that's when we can have some questions and some conversation. So I'll just go on to housing next. So in 2017, only 200 of 1,000 affordable housing units that were called for in the 2009 Plan to End Homelessness were built. So that's significantly less than what in the 2009 Plan to End Homelessness that we had anticipated, aspired, set as a goal. So that's a significant lower number. The city of Edmonton has established that we need about an additional 50,000 units in order to meet the demand, the current demand. So we're way behind that, especially we're way behind the 2009 goal and plan. And I just wanted to give you an idea. In 2019, when we did our vital signs report, the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in Edmonton was about $1,377, and the national average was $1,577. So back in 2019, and yeah, it will have changed, but not significantly, Edmonton was a very affordable place to live. Now, look at these statistics. Back in 2016 census, and that unfortunately is the most recent data that we're working with, but there were over 164,000 households in Alberta who were living in unstable housing. 11.4% of those households are in what we call core housing need, which means that a household cannot access acceptable local market housing without spending 30% or more of their total before income tax on shelter. So what this really tells us is that despite Edmonton being an affordable place to live in terms of rents and that, there's still a significant number of people, whether it be in Edmonton or whether it be throughout Alberta, who are really struggling and are living in unstable housing. And consequently, and this is the number that spending 30% or more, that really shows us that there are many people in Alberta who are having to make some very, very hard choices on a regular basis. Hard choices about whether or not where they get food from, the quality of the food they get, is it nutritious or not, whether they are filling their prescriptions or not, because a significant amount of the income that they have, whether they're getting it through work, whether they're getting it through income support or whatever, is going to pay for their rent. The next slide focuses on children in particular, and 16.6% of all children and youth in Alberta, so aged between 0 and 17, live in low-income families. So this equals 164,000 young Albertans. And low income continues to be a problem, in particular for lone parent families. So one parent families, almost 95,000 children living in single parent families are living in low income. The next slide I just wanted to share with you has to do with food security, because it's another area that the Social Planning Council does a lot of work in. So this, there is a hunger count, and the 2019 hunger count for Alberta, 38.4% of food bank clients in Alberta were children. And we know very well from COVID that that number has not gone down. So almost 40% of Alberta's children are in families that are having to access food banks. In 2019, the Edmonton Food Bank served an average of 21,000 individuals per month. Now, not just necessarily directly outside the doors of the food bank, but through all the various partnerships and depots that they have, whether it be some of the social service agencies, whether it be the churches and that offer the hampers for the food bank. But that was 2019. And we went and looked back to 2014. So really just, 5 years, and it was 13,899. So we know that there has been a significant increase, and it's continued to go forward every year, the need for folks to access food from some other sources. With regards to COVID in this area, we know that the food bank use is up. As well, many Edmonton social service sector organizations have stepped up and have started to also provide hampers and food delivery supports. There's an organization called MAPS Alberta. And if you were to go to if you're interested in finding out more about some of those organizations, if you go to their website, MAPS Alberta, they have a really good map of the city of Edmonton, which actually shows the locations of the many, many organizations besides the Edmonton Food Bank who are also now preparing food hampers and delivering them or having them available to folks in Edmonton. And I would suspect by the time we come out of this pandemic, there will be that much more in terms of folks who are accessing, whether it's food bank, whether it's family members, whether it's their neighborhoods, their churches, whoever, are for assistance when it comes to food. So it is a big issue here. The last slide that I have here, I've got just a couple more, and then that'll give us enough time to talk about other things. But this is just an example again of what the Social Planning Council does in terms of some of the partnerships and some of the organizations we either support or we work with. So we work very closely with the Edmonton Community Foundation. Every year we produce a vital signs report, which is a snapshot of the very data and things that I've already been talking about. And it gives just a picture of what life is like in Edmonton. We also are very much involved with End Poverty Edmonton. I sit on the Stewardship Roundtable for End Poverty Edmonton. We have staff that also are involved with Homeward Trust and the homeless count. And we've done some work with and continue to do some work with some of the direct service agencies in the community. And I've listed here the Islamic Family Social Service Association and also CEASE, which is the Center to End All Sexual Exploitation. We've just entered into a research project with CEASE that we're going to be looking at. So they have a number of mothers who were previously street involved, but have now started to be repatriated with their children. And we're going to be looking at the little bit of assistance that CEASE, financial assistance that CEASE is providing them with on a monthly basis, and the support they're providing them with, and what kind of a difference that's making in their lives and their children's lives. Our role in that project will be to take and analyze that and then put together a report, which we'll use to advocate to the government, as well as advocate to average individuals about the need for a universal basic income. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of some of the work we do. And then again, we do work with our counterparts across Canada with an initiative called Campaign 2000. And that again is looking at advocating to end poverty, child poverty. So this is coming to the end of my formal presentation. So if you're interested in finding out more about our organization or any of the numerous, whether it's reports we write, whether it's the blog posts we have, if you check out our website, we have reports that date back all the way to the 1940s. If you're interested in personally supporting the organization, then consider becoming either a member, because we are a member driven organization. So there are memberships available for folks, or donating or even volunteering with us. The links are on our website. And if you're thinking, well, this is all great, Susan, to have all this information, but in a presentation, but how do I stay in touch with what's going on with the organization? It's very easy. All you need to go is to our website and to the bottom and just subscribe to our newsletter and our weekly emails in there. All you need to do is subscribe, put your email address in there, and what that does is that automatically puts you into a database that automatically is kept up to date on everything we do within the organization. Let's see, is there anything else at this point in time? There really isn't there. So again, here is my contact information. And again, if you ever have any questions or comments or want to share something with me, I would just encourage you to drop me an email, direct email. And there's our website, edmontonsocialplanning.ca. And we're also very active on social media as well. So Edmonton SPC. Okay. So that's the end of my presentation. So now I'm going to go back here. And I'm going to turn it back over to you.
And Susan, thank you very much for that. And I'm assuming you're open to questions or comments.
I am. I will try and do my best to answer them. And if I cannot answer them, then I can definitely get back to you with answers.
And I'll start with a couple. And first one is the City Council responsive to your reports? And related to that, do you have a champion member of council that kind of talks it up for you?
That's a great. Sorry.
Related to that is there a department in the city that works closely with you?
Yeah. Wonderful questions. So yes, yes, and yes. In terms of receptivity, absolutely. In terms of champions, I would say one of our champions has always been Mayor Iveson. He's been an extreme champion of the work of the Social Planning Council, even before he was a mayor. I remember on a number of occasions when we did our Lunch and Learn series, because that's another thing, I didn't really talk about it, but we do Lunch and Learns ourselves. And if you do subscribe through our website, you'll find out what they are and you can attend.
And how many children are living in single parent families at the lower end of the, and my question is, how are these children going to fare?
Okay. Okay, sorry, I was just answering that last question. I'll answer that and then we'll give it a shot on this one. So the mayor for sure, we work very closely with, oh God, the names of the departments keep changing. Judy Smith through FCSS, we do a lot of work with the city staff there. And also, I believe it's called social development, a lot of work with that. So yes, we are very much involved, and any opportunity we can get to speak at City Council, we definitely speak at City Council on issues in the community. So the question that I heard after that had to do with child poverty. I wonder if you could just repeat a bit of that to me.
The volume of the question wasn't very good, so if you could speak up, that would be helpful. Do we know who was asking that question?
Around child poverty?
Most people are muted.
Yeah. If you unmute yourself, then I can hear your question. I think, you know, overall with regards to child poverty, I guess what I can say is that, and I already indicated that the Alberta child poverty, or the Alberta child benefit, has been extremely valuable and very impactful in Alberta, throughout Alberta, to be able to help address child poverty. You know, the irony of it is that all an individual needs to do is fill out a tax return. And if they're eligible for benefits, both federally and provincially, for children benefits, they will automatically get it. Some of you might be aware of an initiative that started, gosh, well, about 16 years ago when I was first with the organization, called Make Tax Time Pay. And it's still up and running, and E4C still runs that program. And it's a program to help individuals, especially low-income individuals, fill out their tax forms for free. It's quite incredible. I know that from past work that I did, especially with some young mothers who were struggling quite a bit, the kinds of things I would hear from them is, well, I have no income. Why should I even fill out an income tax form? And that was the message that we had to really try and get across to them, is that no, even if you are on income support, get your taxes done. Because if you qualify, and the only way the government knows you qualify is through your taxes, if you qualify, you will automatically get those benefits. So again, the benefits are there, they're helping, but it still does not take away from the issue with regards to child poverty in this province. And really, we have to continue to advocate. We have to continue to advocate to government. Right now, we're in a very precarious position where the government is reviewing AISH benefit, where everything is on the table up for review. And I have to tell you quite honestly, amongst my colleagues, we are very, very nervous, and we're very fearful for what potentially could happen. We have seen it. We have seen rates drop. We have seen the eligibility change for a family. You may qualify for the benefit, but then you phase out very quickly. And so all I can say is that as citizens, it's in all of our best interests also to advocate to government to provide what's needed for children and for families. Is there another question?
Michael, you're unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yeah, the presentation was most interesting, Susan. Thank you. You indicated in one of your slides the number and percentage of young people impacted by homelessness and also below the poverty line. What is the scope of the demographic you have on the homeless? You noted there's a very significant percentage were Indigenous. What other demographic information, data do you have relative to the homeless population?
I'm not sure how to answer that question. I know I can probably get you more information on that.
For example, what are the age ranges other than the children?
Oh, that information. Oh, I don't have it in front of me, Michael White, but I can definitely get that. You know, what's really interesting in terms of what you're saying is that, you know, and this kind of ties in a little bit about, even when we get into the conversations about living wage and minimum wage and that, a lot of people make assumptions that minimum wage are young kids in school living at home, right? And that's not the case. I'm going to give you a number that's not accurate, but I will actually follow up with you. But I'm going to say that there's somewhere between 30 and 40% of the people making minimum wage in this province are actually over the age of 26 years of age and older. And are trying to support families, right? And so the same thing goes when we talk about the various demographic ranges for people who are homeless. Sure, I've told you that there's more males than females that are on the list, the by names list, but we also know that a number of females and their children are what we call couch surfing. They're staying with people. They're sleeping on their couches. They're making do and making ends meet that way. When it comes to youth, we know that, and it's some of you maybe know this even more than I do with regards to, you know, a youth, and I believe the province, in terms of the benefits, you qualify to continue to have your benefits until the age of 24. So you'll have some financial assistance with your rent, you'll have some health care, you'll have other sorts of things. But then when you turn 25, you basically don't qualify anymore. And so the impact of sort of those really deep drop-off zones that I call them on individuals. I can go ahead. What I will do is I will find out some more information and share it with your group with regards to more details around sort of getting deeper into the demographics of homelessness.
Yeah, I'd be fascinated, A, with the age breakdown.
Yeah.
Secondly, with the ethnic breakdown. We know the indigenous, what other ethnicities
Yeah.
Appear to have a high level of homelessness, and the relative education level of each cohort.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. I will see what I can get my staff to pull together on that. Yeah, very, very interesting. You know, you just made me think of something. A couple of years ago, we did some work with the food bank, and we looked at, because every 2 years they do a survey of the people who are utilizing their services. And it was a significant number of people that were using their services that actually had a high school diploma, had post-secondary education, and they were having to access the food bank on a regular basis.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Don indicated he had a question. Don Main. Unmute yourself.
Hi. Was it an accident of
Don, you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, I thought you saw my hand.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah. You're next, Karen.
Okay, I'll mute myself.
Okay, Don's having trouble finding the
Bottom left-hand corner of your screen, Don, probably.
Depends on the kind of
Mine's on the
device he
screen, yeah,
has.
on the program.
Mine's on the bottom.
Yeah,
Left.
it should be on the bottom left as you're facing the screen.
Okay, while he's looking, Karen, why don't you go ahead with your question?
Sure.
Okay, Susan, is it an accident of the statistics, or is it the same people? When you said that 164,000 were in unstable housing, and then you said that there are 164,150 low-income children. So are those the same? I mean, are those children in those homes, and it's just accidental that it's both 164,000?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I'm not sure. I went off of what my staff provided me with. So 164,000 households in Alberta living in unstable housing.
Right.
Yeah, and then 164,000 young Albertans.
It was an interesting.
Yeah.
And then the photo that you showed with when you were going over the food bank stats.
Yes.
Was that a picture of a food bank with all those tomatoes?
Probably not. What that would have been, it would have just been a stock photo just to show how important food is. No,
okay.
Probably not. Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Well, you know what? That's a good point though, Karen. And we should be a little more careful in terms of the kinds of images I put on when I'm talking about that. But, you know, again, it just really speaks to I was on a call with someone the other day, and we don't have a shortage of food in this community. We have lots and lots of food in this community.
You have a distribution.
It's the distribution and it's the coordination of that's the issue.
But that's true across the world. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and then one last quick thing. You were talking about other agencies you work with. Do you work with Jewish Family Services?
We don't do a lot of work with them as yet. I'm always open to working with other organizations, but what we do is we try and encourage organizations to come to us with their research needs in that. And so we receive some funding from the city of Edmonton through FCSS to actually do that. And so we're always reaching out to organizations, and I know we've reached out to them at some point in time, but sometimes it's very difficult for the agencies themselves to kind of figure out, well, what is it that I need from the Social Planning Council itself? But we're always really trying to encourage agencies to both use our resources, and for all I know, Jewish Family Services maybe uses some of our resources on our website that we're just not aware of itself. But yeah, we're always trying to encourage the agencies to speak with us. And if you have a research question, or if you have just, you're thinking, there's got to be a different way of doing this. We'd really like to spend the time finding out who else is doing this, get some best practice behind it. That's the kind of work that we can do for the organization, to be able to help them and provide them with some information so that then they can write really good grant applications with a lot of evidence in them to support what they're going for. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, I see Dawn's unmuted.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. You mentioned your work with the Aboriginal people of Edmonton, and I'm wondering, with all the various Aboriginal organizations that I'm aware of in Edmonton, are we really meeting the needs of Aboriginal people, or are there a lot of Aboriginals that are not involved in these organizations?
Yeah. Well, that's a very, again, a very good question, and a really hard question for me to answer. I know that there are some mainstream Aboriginal organizations that are very much involved in what's going on, especially through End Poverty Edmonton, which again, I'm a part of that. But there's the Indigenous Roundtable, and which is a piece of End Poverty Edmonton, and they're doing a lot of really great work there. I also know that there are a number of Indigenous groups, like organizations like Bent Arrow, the Native Friendship Center, that are doing some stellar work with regards to trying to meet the needs of the Indigenous population in that. If I was to venture a guess to that one, I would say that the need is definitely outweighed by the resources that are available, and the ability of organizations. I think that there are champions that are really getting the messaging out there, that are really advocating for, that are really working in those directions. But I would say that the need probably is much higher than that.
Susan, there are a couple of questions on the chat.
Oh,
are you able to read those?
I am. So let's see. Here we go. Okay. So there's a question here from Louise, I believe, and it's children living in poverty and in single parent homes, wondering how these children will fare in terms of learning that may or may not have occurred during the pandemic. They will not have had the advantages of having parents that could help them with online studies. How far have they fallen behind? Interestingly enough, I do have a bit of a story. I don't have any stats around that, but I do have a little bit of a story with regards to that. We're part of being a member agency of the United Way. 4 times a year, we actually get the opportunity to sit down with the other direct service providers in Edmonton. And they're not just children's services, they're all over the place. So the Sexual Assault Center, John Howard, the Family Center, you name it in that. And I have to say that early in COVID, we sat down together, virtually sat down together, and I was beginning to hear what those organizations have done to be able to support their families, at least at the early stages of COVID. Especially the families that had children in there. So we were involved helping a little bit with United Way and with Big Brothers and Big Sisters in identifying the neighborhoods where the lower income neighborhoods in Edmonton, so that that the cable system, so whether it's Shaw or whether it's TELUS, would be able to provide internet services to these families at a reduced rate. I know that between Big Brothers Big Sisters, the United Way, and a number of other organizations, and the Community Foundation for sure, they started getting computers out, laptops out to these families as well for kids, because quite simply, you're living in low income, you don't have that kind of a luxury to have a laptop for your child. I also know that through the school boards that they were also trying to get as much of the equipment out to kids as possible. I often wonder myself the impact of what COVID is going to have, especially on young children and especially on families and kids in school. I happen to live in a neighborhood that is doing quite well, and I see the kids going to school in the morning, their parents taking them, and you know, and then I think about some of the kids in the communities that are not as fortunate as I am. And I do worry very much about what COVID will have done to all children and pushing them behind, period. But the impact of COVID on these families, and especially the immigrant population, that comment was made earlier, the impact on them as well. I do worry quite a bit about what the lasting impact will be on young people, and especially people living in low income. I know what Public Interest Alberta puts out a report each year on child poverty. Yes, that's the report I referred to. We actually partner with Public Interest Alberta and the College of Social Workers to do that Alberta Child Poverty Report. And that's the report that I mentioned a little bit earlier. We just released it in December. It's a great report. If you're interested in finding it, go to our website. It's quite easy to find. Yes, so we do work with them. That's one of the annual things we do with them. This year, we decided to take the report a little bit differently and put a little bit of very personal content in the report. So I think you'll quite enjoy it if you have a chance to look at it. But yes, we do. We work with many, many organizations in this community. And really, I think that's it. I see at the bottom that Guy is indicating it's almost 1 o'clock. I can't believe how quickly an hour goes. So I'm going to just turn it back over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Susan. That's wonderful. And I'm sure everyone enjoyed your chat and the answer to all the questions. Anybody else have any others? And I'd like to, if not, I'd like to just have you stick around and chat with each other or with Susan over the hour, but feel free to leave at this time. And it was wonderful that you all could show up. Dawn, do you have parting words to say? Oh.
Thank you.
And Michael, I will, I'll do what I can to see if I can get that information and then share it maybe through Dawn Main or maybe through Netta that you wanted on the demographic breakdown.
Sure, that'll be great. Netta's got my email address, so
okay,
she can get that to me.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah. Again, I have a general question, if you don't mind.
I'll try and answer it.
It follows up from Karen's question, which she asked you about Jewish Family Services. I'm a past president of that organization.
Yes.
And I just wondered, with the evolution of what is happening in the City of Edmonton administration and all levels of government relative to the COVID situation, and you talked about the challenges that you envisage with AISH. AISH is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
No matter how important that is. I'm just wondering to what degree the Social Planning Council has liaisons with other social service agencies, and whether relative to COVID, there has been any indication of the need and the value and the appetite for linking together, for partnering with one another.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a huge question. Well, to be totally honest, our sector is definitely feeling the pressure from COVID. And when I say our sector, I mean the social service agencies, and especially the agencies of the community that are not for profit. And we're all trying to figure out how to do more with less, which some people say, well, you know what, that's the sector that should be able to get it done, right? Because we always have to work with less. I'm not really sure how to answer that question other than to say that a number of organizations have been looking and potentially partnering with each other on other initiatives. I know for certain that our organization, we do an awful lot of work with End Poverty Edmonton. We do a lot of work with the Community Foundation in the reports that we produce and the advocacy we do. I'm not certain as to specifics about some of those other organizations. C5 is an organization, I'm not sure, Michael, if you're familiar with it, but it's 5 organizations that came together about, I don't know how many years ago now, and decided that in the northeast area of Edmonton, that they were going to look at how they tackle poverty. And they have been doing incredible work around that with the families. And they're all direct service providers. So I can't really pin specifics to it, but I know that agencies are very much interested in trying to work together because the demand is so high and the need is getting greater and greater.
Yeah, and I think I'm with a number of other organizations, and I think the projection is that a significant percentage of not-for-profit organizations will be closing their doors within the next 12 to 24 months, unless they can find ways of developing economies of scale by partnering with others. So I think it's an emergent area, and there are agencies available, and I belong to one of them, that will provide pro bono support to organizations, not-for-profits, who are seeking to establish partnerships or some other mode of survival during this challenging time.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. You know, interesting, just from my own organization's perspective, when COVID started, you know, our organization was actually financially in a pretty good position. All my grant money had already come in for the year. So I already had it, or I had commitments for the year. My staffing was very stable, and it still is stable. But all sort of the things that were kind of going to potentially unhinge your organization, we weren't really necessarily addressing and dealing with any of that in 2020. But going forward, 2021, 2022, they're going to be extremely rough years. They're going to be rough years for all of these organizations. And there will be some that don't continue on. Yeah, I don't really have any other words to say, but yes, that's true.
Yeah, the bottom line is the quicker organizations get together and start to collectively planning for the future, they may not have a future.
Yeah, yeah.
And Don's got something to say.
Well, I would just like to say a sincere thank you to you, Susan, for your presentation today. I thought I knew the organization fairly well, But I learned a lot from what you had to say, and I'm sure that the people that I know who are on the screen and so on, were finding your information most helpful. And so on behalf of the Interfaith Center, I'd like to thank you very much for participating. And you may want to go on with other questions, but I have to leave.
Well,
So,
thank
good luck.
you. Thank you, Don, very much for
Good
inviting
luck.
me to participate in this.
Good luck with your hospitalization.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye for now, everybody.
Bye now.
Do I have time for a quick question?
Netta, please.
Yeah, Susan, I'm just about the statistics about homelessness. There's an overlap. So what does it mean to be experiencing homelessness, but also be provisionally accommodated, please?
I know you were going to ask that question, and I don't have the answer for provisionally accommodated. It's one of the categories that Homeward Trust uses specifically. I'm going to look that one up because when I went and looked at that, I went, okay, what is provisionally housed versus being on the street versus being in a shelter? So I'm going to look into that, and I'm going to get that back to you as well. It's one of the categories they use on their dashboard to be able to categorize people. But I'm curious specifically as to what provisionally housed means, because what's the difference between being in a shelter, sleeping on a mat versus being, I don't know, somewhere else. So I will look into that one too. Yeah.
If it's new since COVID.
Is that kind of like the movie The Soloist?
Kind of like the movie The Soloist. I never saw The Soloist.
They put him in low-income housing, and then he went back out on the street because he couldn't handle it.
Well, yeah, see. Yeah, see, and that's the housing first. That's the housing first approach. Sorry.
Margaret, go ahead.
Helen?
Oh, I was just going to say, this is a speculation. If that's a new category since COVID, I wonder if that's the people that they put up in hotels.
You know, I don't know. And I don't know if it is, but that would be, Margaret, that would be a good hunch. But I want to look into that because yes, provisionally housed, because of the hotels have come into place, but I don't know how long the provisionally housed category has been around. So I'm going to look into that, but that would make total sense. They're temporarily housed in the hotels or somewhere for a short period of time while they're trying to access and get more permanent housing. That's the biggest issue. You know, when I went back and I was talking, when I was making reference to the fact that we've only built 200 of the 1,000 units that we need, and you look at what the city of Edmonton projects, the need is 50,000 units that we need. That's one of the biggest stumbling blocks here, is that we just do not have enough appropriate, affordable housing available. And we don't have that because it takes a lot of time to build that. You can't just build an apartment overnight. But we also need the commitment by the orders of government to be able to fund these things. And we know that in 2009, the provincial government of the time had indicated, and I believe that would have been Stelmach, because he was a big proponent of this, that, you know, we invest a certain amount of money every year into the plan to end homelessness and to increase and build up that stock. And then in the subsequent years afterwards, the amount of money that was being allocated to that fund started to dwindle and go down. So again, it just reinforces that, you know, as citizens, we need to be able to hold our governments accountable and say, if homelessness is not acceptable, and it's truly not acceptable, if child poverty and children having to go to school hungry is not acceptable, and it clearly is not acceptable, then what do we do to be able to address that? And as citizens, we need to speak up and say, it's not acceptable. You cannot do this. We need to do it differently.
Just a quick point. The online, the definition.
Did you find something out?
Yeah, the definition of provisionally
Provision?
accommodated. This is Canadian definition. This describes situations in which people who are technically homeless and without permanent shelter access accommodation that offers no prospect of permanence.
Okay. So that probably is the couch surfing that some people are doing. I would guess that would fall in that category. Yeah, as well as other areas. Yeah. Thank you.
Helen has something.
Yes, I'd just like to say I know only 2 or 3 people, or I recognize only 2 or 3 people on the Zoom this afternoon. And I just wanted to say that from the question and answer period, I learned that I should try not to be late next time. I also learned from a private chat with Meta that this presentation has been recorded. And as an ordinary member of the interfaith organization, are you all right, people, if I forward the recording to the fledgling Interfaith Connections group to which I belong in St. Albert? We're only 4 or 5 members, and mainly because of the comments I heard about the Indigenous people's situation, about homelessness and poverty and lack of appropriate nourishment for good health. I think that we need to be particularly into a very steep upward learning curve. So with your permission, Netta and Susan and Guy, I sincerely hope that, that this is all right with you for me to forward this recording to our little group.
Helen,
We're learning. We're very much in a steep upward learning curve about each other's various faith experiences and
beliefs
as well. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank
Helen,
you.
just so you know, it will, if technically we can make it happen, we'll put it up on our website. That'll be your access point.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we'd love for you to share this information and just to encourage people to go to our website and subscribe. It's free. There's no charge. And the more people are aware of the resources we offer and the reports that we put out and the information, the better it is for all of us. Like you said, the learning curve for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Once again, thank you so much. Most interesting. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome very much. And I'll follow up with you, Netta, with regards to the information Michael wanted.
Yes, please. Please and
Okay.
thank you.
You bet. All the best.
All the best.
Been wonderful, Susan. And thank you
Thank
for
you.
everyone else that's been here.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye now.
And that'll say good afternoon.
Good day. Thanks all.